Hi, everyone. Welcome to the ninth episode of the Journey podcast. I'm your host, Mashroor. And in today's episode, I had the opportunity to talk to one of my mentors, Dr. Wade Wilson from the University of Waterloo, about mental health during these tough times that we're going through. Dr. Wilson is a lecturer at the University of Waterloo. He was also my thesis supervisor from my final year of my undergrad. Dr. Wilson has a strong background in sports psychology and mental training skills and the applications of psychology in sports. We covered a lot of topics in this conversation, such as anxiety with performance, anxiety in the long run. We talked about how to overcome these anxieties, how to be more present, how to be more mindful of everything that's going around, and how to stop comparing ourselves to each other. So I hope you really enjoy this episode. I really enjoyed it. And just a little disclaimer before we start, both Dr. Wilson and I spoke from our own personal experiences, and we don't mean to demean anyone else's clinical mental health because we both know that these topics are subjective, and therefore we don't claim to be speaking for everyone, or we don't claim to be in the position of understanding where everyone else is coming from. Hey, Wade, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No, when I like announced that you're gonna be on, a lot of people hit me up on my social media, and they were like, a lot of your former students, I guess, and they had a lot of good things to say. They were like, "Oh, I love this professor," and we used to meditate before class, and we just like everyone was like super psyched that you're gonna be on, and so like from me too, like I've known you for a while now. We've worked together, and for the past year of my life, I guess you've kind of been a mentor to me. So for that, I want to thank you as well, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, just yeah, thank you very much. I'm honored for you to say that, and yeah, it's been for our relationship over the past years. Yeah, from student lecturer to friends. Like it's amazing how our relationships kind of transition. So, but it's been a pleasure, and yeah, we've had a lot of great conversations. I'm looking forward to this one as well, and to all of the people that posted on your Instagram page. Again, I'm humbled and honored. Thank you for those comments, much appreciated, and I'll continue to try and do my best.
Yeah, I think like every time, even the way our I guess more the student professor relationship started for my final year was kind of random as well, right? I think I was
Mhm.
walking by a classroom that you happened to be in, and I took a course with you 3-4 years ago, probably 20 somewhere around
Mhm.
2017, and I just wanted to say hi because I saw your cool tattoos, and I was like, I was like, those are pretty cool, and like I haven't talked to this guy for over 3 years, so I was like, let's see what he's up to, and that kind of led to more opportunities and into
Mhm.
this relationship, which I'm very grateful for. So and it kind of shows you, I guess, that in life within like opportunities kind of like butt off of each other, and
Mhm.
before you know it, you're somewhere where you didn't expect to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no, yeah, like who knows how what that our different trajectories might have been if you didn't pop in and say hi kind of thing, because you've been around co-op for a while, so it was
Hmm.
awesome. We just started talking, and yeah, I like my tattoos. Each one tells a story, and it's
Hmm.
part of the kind of my mosaic of what has made what's gone into to me with my heritage and my family. So it's kind of a way to honor them as well, and knowing that I'll never forget any of those impacts and those influences from where I've came from. So yeah, but yeah, then those conversations started, and we started talking about different books and different authors, and just the whole mindset
Hmm.
in general, and how we might adopt certain beliefs and things like that, and how those play out through our lives.
I think being like a health like coach, like you mentioned, and correct me if I get the title wrong. But like, I think coming from that framework and having students as well kind of created this opportunity for the students to kind of reach out to you and to say, hey, I'm like feeling this type of way, or like, I'm not too sure about this exam, whatever the case may be. Because, I think a lot of our talks extended way past the academic field. We talked a lot about life in general, and it was a very honest. We had very honest, vulnerable conversations that helped me grow into the man I am today. Right. So I think that you having that background in like helping athletes overcome their anxieties, and having I guess strength in that area really impacted our relationship, and I'm assuming the other people that reached out to me, their relationships with you as well.
And yeah, I've always, as I tell the students in my classes, my door is always open. And if, if I can't, if I don't have the immediate answers right away, we'll figure it out. We'll find somebody that does, and we'll see what we can do, be as productive as possible. But yeah, the sports psychology background really primed me for my current role where I am. And I couldn't be happier and prouder to be where I am, because I get to interact with all kinds of great people, and great friendships start like this one. So
Mm-hmm.
it's, you make those connections, and you foster them. And like you said, different things bud from those. So just being open to those opportunities, and, going grabbing a quick coffee like we did so many
Mm-hmm.
times, just, excuse my French, shot the shit for a while. It was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was definitely a blessing, just because, and I know a lot of people can I know a lot of people feel this way as well. Like when you're in an uncertain situation, it's good to have mentors. It's good to have people to guide you through the route, I guess, because it's
Mhm.
so uncertain and so like random, I guess, in a lot of ways. And for me, there's certain things that you said to me during our conversation that like I still try to like strive to like apply to my life today.
Mhm.
So one thing you said was like your perception is your reality,
Mhm.
right? And that was like, wow, like that just like hit me like like a bus. I was ready. Like I was not ready for
Yeah. Well, you were open. It was just the timing, right? And but yet it is. We think about it like that. Our perception, how we perceive it, is what our reality is, and we automatically assume that other people are seeing it the same way we are and experiencing it the same way we are,
that. Hmm.
kind of thing. So it's like, this is my reality right now. And then also, understanding that my reality is not going to be exactly the same from someone else's reality, and respecting that as well.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's never the same, and that's also that kind of ties into like the comparison mindset, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
understanding that you can never compare yourself to someone else, because two people are never in the same position. The
Exactly.
circumstances are never equal, right? So like, but I think a lot of us, and including myself, I fall victim to this all the time, that I subconsciously, especially if you're scrolling through like social media or whatnot, you subconsciously fall into this trap of comparing your life
Mm-hmm.
position based on
Oh yeah.
certain snapshots or whatever.
Absolutely. And that's what it is. They're just snapshots, right, of maybe what some people are proud to show, or their experiences. But yeah, that's one of the biggest, I guess, pitfalls that we all do, right? Even the
Hmm.
most mentally strong people will have instances where they catch themselves comparing, what they have or don't have to somebody else, kind of thing. And I guess it's in that awareness of thought to be like, well, that's nice and all, but we don't see the whole picture,
Hmm.
right? Like we just see that one snapshot, and then we, of course, start to create stories and narratives in our own mind about, what those pictures mean, and maybe we feel bad for ourselves because we don't have that, or maybe we get excited because, oh, that looks cool, kind of thing, or and want to know more about it. But yeah, we're kind of socially comparing ourselves all the time, and when we're in performance context, it's heightened, intensified so much. Like, you know,
Hmm.
academics,
Right, right. I was
sports,
just
like,
about
so
to bring that up. Yeah.
yeah. And sometimes, and it's tough, like, where you have friends, and your support group, but at the same time, they might also be your competition,
Right, right.
kind
And
of
that's
thing.
like a very, I guess, tricky spot to be in, because sometimes, it's like the gray, I guess, because
Mhm.
on one hand, you obviously should be happy for your friends that they're succeeding, and that should inspire you and bring you up towards like
Mhm.
a better you, right? But at the same time, a part of you can also be resentful or like bitter about someone else's
Mhm.
success, and that's like a very, I guess, that is not really a productive mindset to be in. But like I've been feeling sometimes, like I guess since I just finished up my undergrad, and with all the uncertainties with COVID-19
Mhm.
and everything that took place, convocation was, I guess, postponed or whatever the case may be. I finally got
Virtual,
my
put
yeah,
online, yeah.
I finally got my degree in the mail, which is nice.
Nice, get
And
it, put it up.
I will. I will. I think I need to buy a frame and then put it up there. But yeah, I've been feeling like, this year I didn't really. I just kind of took a year off, and we talked about this. I took this year off to kind of
Mhm.
realize where I have to go, because I didn't know where I was at the time. And it's been challenging. There's like very unique challenges that come with it, and one of the challenges is like when you see, like I get inspired when my friends are like getting into different schools, like professional programs and graduate
Mhm.
programs and medical schools. but at the same time, a part of me is still like, damn, am I being left behind? You know, like,
Mhm.
is this it? Is this where, like, you know, the route diverts into like,
Mhm.
you know, people that are, and obviously a lot of this is just self narrative, right? So it's not
Mhm.
really something that I'm actually, you know, that's something that's actually there, but it's what I'm perceiving at the time.
Mhm. Yeah, and sometimes when we do feel those, we'll say call them negative emotions or those unwanted ones, where we really should be, we're happy on one hand for our friends that got into their program or got into their professional school, but of course, like we wouldn't be human if we didn't think there wasn't some part of me, like you said, that resentment or anger or frustration. It's going to be there, right? But hopefully the more positive emotions win out over the negative
Hmm.
emotions, right? Like we can't experience two competing emotions equally at the same time, right?
Right.
It's that when we come back, like we'll use confidence, or well, our confidence and fear, right? We can't. Whenever there's worry, it's always going to circumvent the confidence. We can't really experience two competing emotions equally at the same time. One of them's going to win out over the other,
Hmm.
and it's going to be whatever one that you choose. Like
Right.
it'll come down to a choice in the end. Yeah.
Right. And that's like a really important distinction to learn, I guess, because sometimes all of this can feel helpless. Like you can feel
Mm-hmm.
like so much is out of your control.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But one thing I'm learning now, and I realize it's like a life course of learning, but it's understanding that these things that are happening, right? There's a way we can take it in. There's a way we
Mm-hmm.
can hone it down to like some we can perceive it as if it's something that will help us become better,
Mm-hmm.
right? Rather than having like a victim mindset or having like you know, why do bad things always happen to me kind of mindset, which is something that
Mm-hmm.
obviously everybody falls victim to, but I
Yeah.
do too as well.
Oh yeah. Well, we all do. I do as well. Like it's like maybe there's like a series of completely, random events that just you stub your toe and then something else happens and then you miss this
All
and
right.
like like maybe a little comedy of errors kind of thing. And it's like,
All right.
oh, why is everything bad happening to me
All
all
right.
at
Right.
once, right? But no, we all experience those and those thoughts, and we shouldn't think of ourselves as bad people for it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we shouldn't even, and then further, we compound that worry, anxiety, and stress when we feel that we shouldn't be experiencing it like this.
It's like a positive feedback loop of anxiety, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
you get more anxious thinking about how anxious you are, thinking about how
Yeah.
anxious you are, right? And it keeps going.
Mm-hmm. And
It's
how I shouldn't be
compounding.
feeling, and why am I? Yeah, and then
Like, why
like,
am I feeling this way? And then
yeah.
you like try to resist it, and the more you try to resist it, the bigger it becomes, and it snowballs into
Mm-hmm.
something that maybe is it becomes like more difficult to handle in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, we like in our minds, like there's lots of thoughts. We have between like a 60, 70,000 thoughts a day, right? Like that's a lot. That's a
Yeah, it's
lot
a lot
going
of
on up
thoughts.
there. But we we'll get well, sometimes we get fixated on some of those thoughts, and like you said, we create a lot of our own anxieties up here,
Hmm.
right? Like we start thinking about maybe a decision we have to make, and then instead of thinking of all the good things that might come from it, we jump instantly to like all these what ifs. Like we'll create 99 problems that won't even there's no logical way they could come true, but we're worried about those things.
Do you think that kind of anxiety roots from like fear of like not getting what you want, or is it something that's even more primordial?
uh like that's very possible that it can be a lot of anxiety. Okay, I guess with the fear element, and
Hmm.
I don't want to speak to people's experiences that have the anxiety disorders and or those types of things,
Right.
because there's lots of other things that play as well, but
Right.
we'll say like in a performance context,
Hmm.
right? We the most of our anxiety is rooted out of fear,
Hmm.
and fear gets broken down into a couple things, or two main categories. You got your rational fears and your irrational fears, right? So those rational fears are going to be things like in the performance or sport context, where we're directly putting ourselves in harm's way, where there's a possibility that we could get physically hurt,
Right.
right? So that's kind of the rational. The irrational is all of the other scenarios and things that we create. It's the rational fears are out of feeling embarrassed or looking foolish or underperforming, right?
Right.
And usually that type of irrational fear is developed from previous experiences, because once our brain
Mm.
has experienced something, it doesn't forget.
And it tries to avoid like the negative experiences.
So it'll
Right.
try to do whatever it can to avoid the negative experiences. So that's the logical mind versus the emotional mind. The emotional
Mm-hmm.
mind is going to want us. It doesn't matter how we look or how we perform. We just want this experience to be over with as quick as possible, so we don't have to feel this
Right, right, right.
embarrassment or right kind of thing. So it's rooted in previous embarrassing experiences that we're worried are going to happen again, or thinking about future possible mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Even in the academic, context, I guess like that's also a certain type of performance,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm finding now that I'm writing this MCAT at the end of August, and I'm finding now that as I'm practicing for it and as I'm studying for it, I have a lot of anxiety with performance, like performing that during the actual exam. I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
what if this goes down, and what if this goes down, what if I
Mm-hmm.
get this wrong, and then I find myself, in the middle of the night, I'm like going to statistics of people that got in or whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
and like all of it is like running through my head, right? And
Yeah.
it burns up a lot of calories, and you get
Mm-hmm.
really fat up here, I guess, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you get constipated with these ideas that are not
Yeah.
true,
Mm-hmm.
and we as humans just, I guess, tend to hold on to negative emotions way longer than we hold on to positive emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once that negative emotion is kind of triggered and the ball starts rolling, like it's very difficult to like take a step back and stop it or move away from it.
Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to be objective with it too and logical, right? Because we're actually experiencing it. We're experiencing, right? And our
Hmm.
perception, back to the perception reality thing, we can have
Hmm.
all kinds of people saying, our support systems and, all, but they can be very positive and helpful. But if we're not ready to see that and accept that, then it's not good.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that anxiety gets in the way of actually doing the work that will get you
Mm-hmm.
there, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I know this from like our work on habits and athletes and stuff like that, that I know that if I stick to my daily obligations, I
Mm-hmm.
will be fine. I believe that, right? But at the end of
Yeah.
the day, like, like you said, it's always a battle that's going on between like the two sides.
Mm-hmm.
If a part of my brain is like, you're doing this wrong, you're whatever, and it mounts up to be something that becomes irrational, becomes
Mm-hmm.
very difficult to handle, even though I know that if I just shut this off for a bit
Mm-hmm.
and just go through the motions, I will be okay, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, like our well, who was it? I can't remember the author, like the person who's coined with the quote, but it's the secret to success is hidden away in our daily habits, right?
Mm,
So it's we have a general routine for our day, right? Even the small thing, and with that, the secret to success being hidden away in our daily habits is paying attention to details of the things that we think are inconsequential.
right, right, right. The small,
making your
minute things. Yeah.
making your bed, right? Making sure that like your space is productive for you,
Hmm.
like, or making sure you're eating it, what you're supposed to be eating, and making sure, like, staying kind of disciplined. But once we make it a habit, that's just automatic pilot in that instance now, and then that's when we start to see our performance and our production ramp
Right.
up, kind of
These
thing.
like habits, I guess we're habitual creatures, and these habits
Hmm.
compound over time. Even
Hmm.
just like a little bit is better than nothing at all.
Hmm.
Right. So I think there's a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear that talks about this idea of like
Hmm.
compounding. It's kind of like money. And like the more
Yeah.
you're investing in yourself every single day, if you do just a little bit of it, you get
Hmm.
a lot of return out of that.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize how far you can go from just doing that.
Hmm.
And I like it's but I guess since we are so into like instant gratification, it's difficult to see that. It's difficult to see that you have to put in the work today so then you can be better tomorrow,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We love
Eh,
that fast food,
oh.
whatever, instantly, the social media likes, whatever it may be, all of it is just
Hmm.
like instant. And sometimes you get lost in that world and you're clouded. You can't see the bigger picture.
Yeah. Well, it's a chemical rush, right? When you get a like for something you put up, like, there's also a physiology component to it
Right,
as
right.
well.
Very recent thing too,
Hmm.
like in our
Hmm.
in our evolution, I guess.
Yeah.
You know.
So we're fighting our biology too as well, because we
Right,
like
right.
we like that sensation. It feels good. It's yeah.
I think I had to like delete. I've been just deleting like social media apps off my phone during the day until I get all my work done. And once I get my work
Hmm.
done, I'll reward myself as like with like social media or whatever for half an hour, and then
Hmm.
that will be it. And then I'll let it be.
Yeah, and that's a good way to go about it. And then it's also part of your routine. It's like during this time between maybe 5:30 and 6:30, this
Hmm.
is what I'm doing. So I don't have to worry about, well, procrastinating,
Right, right,
because I'm
right.
doing what I'm supposed to be doing at this time.
And if you're procrastinating, and if you're thinking about the fact that you are procrastinating, it might like add more anxiety towards you getting that work
Yeah,
done, and so you
back with
delay
that
it even
compound
longer.
anxiety.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I think like once you discipline your entire day down to like the minute, it really helps. At least for me, I've only been doing this for like 5 days now, so I'm not even gonna come out of this trying to pretend like I know a lot about this. Or I've just read about it and I've heard other people talk about this, but I found that discipline does equal freedom. The more I've
Hmm.
structured my life, I like because I guess the way it is just like you have to be both the boss and the employee, right?
Hmm.
So that means you don't want to work for a boss that's like a tyrant, right? So you have to give yourself rewards and breaks,
Yep.
and you have to love yourself in that regard.
Hmm.
But also you don't want to be super chaotic where your boss doesn't supervise anything at all and you're just doing
Exactly.
whatever, right? So
Yeah.
it's finding that balance between those two evils, I guess, evil
Hmm.
and the good. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes in that, if with that said, like I like using the 80-20 rule.
Oh, what's that?
If I can, if I'm 80% of the time,
Hmm.
if I'm sticking to my routine and my schedule, things are going to be okay.
Okay,
Kind of thing,
okay.
like maybe on like a Sunday afternoon, if I've got, if something, don't get around, if I don't get around to doing it, or I didn't, that's okay.
Hmm.
Because right, we got to take into account some things are going to pop up, right? Friends or might call, or you get a call from a parent, or you know something that totally takes you
Like
out of
life
routine. The
happens.
life happens.
Yeah.
You got to go take care of it. This just got dropped in my lap, so
Hmm.
okay, now my attention and everything's here. That 80-20.
Okay, no, that's a pretty good rule to have, I guess, because
If I can keep on my routine 80% of the time, things are gonna be running pretty smoothly.
I think what people are, including myself, sometimes when you believe in like the 1 or 0 law, I guess, like where like it's basically like either I go all in or I don't go in at all. That's what is toxic in the long run, because then you put a lot of like hardships on yourself and
Oh, of
obstacles on
course.
yourself, because you judge yourself really harshly just because you don't get all of it
Hmm.
done or whatever, right? So.
Yeah, it's so rigid, and that's part of that perfectionist thinking, right?
Mhm.
It all has to be perfect, or it's a complete failure, right?
Right.
Like people, like I have students and athletes that I've worked with. It's like or we'll say students as well that want to come in and talk about their grades, and
Mhm.
it's you know 95. Why didn't I get 98?
That sounds like my mom.
No, no, but no, and like I encourage those conversations as well.
Right.
Like I like to sit down and go over the tests and ask questions and those types of things. But it's like it's I can't like and for wherever it's coming from, if it's an internal or external pressure, it's like wow, that's a 95. That's awesome,
Right. Right. No.
right? And but it wasn't good enough. Like, but what
Right.
is it going to be good enough?
I mean that threshold, I guess, is like very subjective to people, right?
Hmm.
And they can
Hmm.
choose whatever value gives them that
Yeah.
feeling of success, right?
Hmm.
And I think a lot of it has to do with societal pressures, for sure. I felt that,
Hmm.
like when your friends are doing well and you're not. Like
Hmm.
we talked about this, and I talk about this a lot on this podcast. But like my first, I went from academic, like at risk of withdrawal, so that's like below 65
Hmm.
average, to like a mid 90 average in my last year. So that took 4 years of time,
Hmm.
and that increase was just based on habits, right? And it was based
Hmm.
on like a switch in perception of like, I became more, I guess, process oriented than
Hmm.
the goal oriented people. And
Yeah.
that to me now I'm realizing is like even more important, to just like stick to the journey.
Hmm.
This podcast is called The Journey as well because of that reason. um
Yeah.
yeah, and like, so like, because I realized there is no end, like there is no destination, you know.
Mhm. Well, when you mentioned like you went from like you said process to outcome, right? Those are two types of goals, right? So you have your outcome goal at the very top, way up here.
Hmm.
That's your destination, or that's what you want at
Right.
the end, or like the end result, right?
Hmm.
But then we also take into account that there's two other types of goals that are going to put you in a higher probability of reaching that outcome that you want,
Hmm.
Well, and what we also have to understand with the outcome aspect is that it might not be exactly what we want. It might be similar, but it's also largely out of our control too, that final
Right.
outcome.
Right.
And
Right.
that is a very tough concept to grasp. And sometimes I still grapple with it. It's like, and then we start to think, well, I put in all this time and effort, and well, why shouldn't I get what I want at the end?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But using it like a kind of a competitive sport context, it's like your outcome is the end of the tournament. Say you win the tournament or win a game.
Mm-hmm.
That's the outcome. But what went into increasing your probability of achieving that outcome? Right.
Right.
Well, that's your performance markers. Right. So we'll use the sport, maybe the sport of hockey. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what if, we looked at the statistics, things that we can measure and say, oh, well, we won 65% of our faceoffs today,
Right.
which added another, 6 minutes of puck control. When
Right.
we have the puck longer, we're
Right.
higher probability to score more goals, right? So instead of focusing on the outcome, our goal now is, and it's much more controllable, is that we're going to work on winning 65% of our faceoffs. So everyone in those faceoffs knows what they're going to do to get the puck and where it's going to go.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
So that's your performance metric. Go down a step further. Now we're getting right into the roots of it, right? This is where your process oriented goals come into play. What's going to put you in a higher probability of winning 65% of the faceoffs? This
Right.
comes down to the skill, the tech, like all of like the practice, like all of those day-to-day things,
Those
making sure
microcosms.
you're drinking enough, staying hydrated, you're eating, you're sleeping, so you can perform at your best and be mentally alert for that next game.
Right. Right. Wow.
So then you can probably work towards or controlling things a bit more to winning 65% of the faceoffs, which when you do that puts you in a higher probability of getting the ultimate outcome. But
It's like
again, go ahead.
building the foundation of like getting there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's like a really great way of looking at it, because if you gamify everything and you quantify it down to like what you really need to do, like for example, for me, it's like, oh, get 2 chapters done a day and that's it. Don't worry about anything else, right? And it will work out. It will over
Mm-hmm.
time. I will get that those repetitions in, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll learn about these topics. I'll understand it better. But I think like when someone looks at a daunting task, right? So for example, in the sports context, it might be to win, I don't know, the NBA championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just by thinking about that, that is a huge mountain to climb, right? It's a long way there, right? So the
Yep.
same has been for me for like my, like taking this gamble, taking this year off, and then just like figuring out where I want to go, and then aiming up towards these like bigger goals, like professional school goals. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a long long road to that destination, right?
Yep.
So if you keep thinking about that, then all you're going to do is like you're going to add more, you're going to crumble under pressure, because there's
Mm-hmm.
so much expectation that you might have from yourself
Yep.
about that situation, right? But like you said, if you take it down to like the process, the performance,
Mm-hmm.
and try to control what you have in your control
That's right.
to become the better version of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, yeah, that's a very useful skill to have.
And that comes down to our day-to-day thoughts and how we process our emotions too, right?
Hmm.
Some days you're not going to feel like doing it,
That's
right?
like
You're not
80%
going
of
to,
the days.
yeah, I don't feel like doing this, or I don't feel like doing that, because if there's no deadline on me, I don't feel like doing anything. I can push
Right,
it off,
right,
push it
right.
off, push it off, right? Well, no, like every day is you, right? You honor yourself when you, it's like you said, take care, stick to the process,
Hmm.
right? You're building you're building your work. Yeah, and it comes down to those choices. Some days we're not going to feel like it, and that's okay,
Hmm.
right? This is where that 80-20 comes in as well, right? And yeah, am I going to slip up and eat some things I shouldn't eat? Am I going to slip up and take an extra rest day?
Right,
When I should be working out, right?
right,
Yeah,
right,
I will, but I'm not going to beat myself up for that, because I know that I can get back on track fairly quickly
right. And that,
through how through my thought
right,
habit, right? And sometimes we got to override our emotion. I don't feel like it is a lot. It happens a lot. But again, that's your emotional mind thinking versus your logic mind thinking.
I think momentum for me, at least, from just personal experiences, momentum carries more for me than emotion does, right? So like emotion, like, I can watch a couple of YouTube videos and just get pumped up to like work out or like study or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case may be. But like if I start from really small tasks that are really easy to do, if I start my
Mm-hmm.
day like that, I find that I get things going. I get the ball rolling, and
Oh
once I got
yeah.
the ball rolling, I'm good to go. At night I can sleep like a baby because I know I've done
Mm-hmm.
my daily obligations.
Oh yeah. And it feels good too.
Right,
It feels good.
right,
Just production, right? Like even getting up when you set your alarm because you want to get up at 7 a.m.
right,
You start the day off with a win.
right,
Even though you
right.
don't feel like it, you still, and like you said, momentum. I'm get up and I'm moving. Okay, now
Hmm.
I'm up. Well, I might as well brush my teeth or
Right, right,
whatever, right?
yeah,
Might as well make my bed now, or
right.
that. You're right, kind of thing. It start that compound productivity.
Everything kind of feeds into everything else, I guess, because like once like I
Mm-hmm.
realized that when I was so the way I've been scheduling my days now is like I wake up in the morning and then I do the task that takes the least amount of effort, least
Mm-hmm.
amount of activation energy, if you want to call it that, to like get things rolling, right? Like sometimes getting out of bed is like the hardest thing you have to do during the day, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as I'm up, I'm like, all right, let's do like the studying that is the easiest to do, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
do 3 questions here. That's really easy to do. But once I get that done, and then I go to like 3 to 10, and then I just like start like gaining momentum,
Mm-hmm.
and before you know it, like I'm 6 7 hours in, I'm in that flow state where it's just like I'm just riding that wave.
Yep.
I'm getting through it. I'm listening to some lo-fi hip hop beats, just like
Mm-hmm.
focused on my task, and things get rolling. But if I woke up in the morning and I'm like, okay, first thing I'm gonna do is like, I don't know, do something very difficult,
Mm-hmm.
then you might put a roadblock in your own life, and then
Oh
not
yeah.
get things done.
Well, it's if I guess if you don't have confidence that you're going to be able to get it done, right?
Hmm.
To be able to stick, like we don't have confidence that like, or the thought have like I can get up, I'm going to do my stuff, and I know it's going to be great for me.
Hmm.
I think it was it Carl Lewis said, if we don't have confidence in our process, we're always going to find a way not to win.
Right, right, right. Self-sabotaging ourselves to
Mm-hmm.
like kind of, so we can't get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess it takes a lot of self-discipline also, and also self-belief to become the person you're
Yeah.
trying to be.
Belief.
Right.
That's the one. Because there's always going to be that little negative voice in your head.
Hmm.
It's always going to be there. And how do we override that? Right? Because like I want to be this or I want to do this, but then as we get older with our experiences and how our brain doesn't forget anything, it's always going to be there to use that against us if we're trying to buck the norm of our thought habit, right? It's always going to be there to try and suck us back into it.
I think
Because
a lot
it's
of it is also like conditioning, right? Over time, just like any
mm-hmm,
other habit, thinking negatively is also a habit, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So if you do it if you do it autonomously every single day and you don't even realize that you're doing it, right? And over time, like we said, it compounds.
oh
And
yeah,
maybe there will be a day where like, I guess the dragon is too big to slay and then you don't know what to do. You're living in
mm-hmm.
chaos.
Well, even with that too, we talk about the stress and the anxiety and that comes along with it. There's the physiological
Right.
implications too of the high blood pressure and all of those things as well.
Right. Because your body's always tense. It's always ready to go
Mm-hmm.
to war, even though there's,
Yeah. Well, on a moment's notice, we're fight or flight, just like that. So
right.
it's like our body, like it's the equilibrium, right? Like we might have really good highs and low lows, but our body's always going to try and come back to a homeostasis.
Right. Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you think of the positive stuff that happens, maybe like marriages or
Hmm.
getting into your program of choice. It's going to be
Right.
great, but
Right.
your body's naturally going to fight to bring it back to your kind of set being well point or set well point kind of thing. And then same with the lows, it's going to go, but it's going to try and create that homeostasis.
Right. I think it's the same for, I guess, every profession wherever someone's trying to like, I guess, best themselves and become
Mm-hmm.
the best at what they're trying to do. Right. The difficulties I think with like, competition in sports and competition in real life is like sometimes it can really bring out, like if someone is very goal oriented, it can bring
Mm-hmm.
out like negative processes that they might employ in order to get to the, like playing dirty, if you will,
Sure,
to
playing
get to the
dirty
point.
or even like neglecting their own health and wellness,
Right, right.
overwork, workaholic, that kind of stuff. Like I have to do this, I have to do this all the time, and being on all the time, like that's unsustainable over the long term.
And I think in our culture also, that's kind of, it's glorified to be this workaholic machine, that, gets always productive, like Dwayne the Rock
Mhm.
Johnson or someone like that,
Mhm.
up at 5 a.m. working out, just like getting paid.
Yeah, but Dwayne the Rock Johnson doesn't have to worry about scheduling his days.
Right.
Because like we see those people and we're like, well, why not us? And we're like, okay, well, that's a valid question. But for those people that like those, and I love Dwayne the Rock Johnson.
Hmm.
He's one of the when I was right into wrestling during his heyday when he was the Rock. Like the Brahma Bull, he was
Oh
awesome.
yeah, yeah, me too.
But he's inspirational. Yeah, draw on the inspiration. But when it comes down to, and like, what's that quote? Like Beyonce has 24 hours in a day as well. Yeah, but
Right, right.
you know, not everyone's married to a record producer, label, whatever, or has, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's comparing apples to oranges in a
Right.
sense, but we still use that comparison. Like that's we set that as our expectation, and it's like, whoa, yeah, it could happen, but there's gonna be, there's a lot of things have to
So
be put in place first.
if someone struggles a lot with, having these expectations of like how their life is supposed to turn out, and life rarely, no one was planning for COVID-19, no one was planning for
Mm-hmm.
any of this. Life rarely turns out the way you plan it. Things just kind of, I guess, flow through whatever state it has to go through.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is very anxious about the future, someone who's like holding on to these expectations, and when reality doesn't meet the expectation, they become more anxious and they become,
Mm-hmm.
harder on themselves. Like, what kind of advice
Mm-hmm.
would you give someone like that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we got to recognize our thought habits, right? So being aware of how we're talking to ourselves is the first one. Um, Something that I've recently started taking into practice as well. It's called the ABCs: accept, believe, challenge.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, and we know there's more research coming out. Optimism and positivity get a boost when we express 5 daily gratitudes. So I challenge when we are in that kind of negative mind space where we're feeling that everything, like nothing's working out for us, and we're feeling defeated. I think that at that time more than ever, it's we need to still acknowledge what's good in our life,
Hmm.
what we're grateful for, even though my expectation didn't pan out the way I wanted it to. There's again getting to that outcome that is largely dependent on things out of our control.
Right.
Right? We still get fixated on it, but acknowledging the good that comes along with it, or the things
Right.
that we have in our present that we are grateful for.
So I guess it just, like you said, like comes back down to your perspective too, and like,
Mm-hmm.
how you're perceiving the world. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's always the flip side of the coin, that
Mm-hmm.
you can look at almost any situation and take the positives out of that situation, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like grow from that.
Yeah, and sometimes we have no other choice but to, right?
Right.
Like with COVID, we can try and resist the change that is happening with all of the things that are happening that are out of our control, and maybe make ourselves miserable doing
Hmm.
it, thinking about, well, this sucks, that sucks, this,
Right.
or this is actually looking at this COVID situation. This is the most amount of time my wife and I have spent together since we've actually been living together.
Wow, a lot of people have said that on the
Hmm.
internet. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it's been good, and we were thinking like we'll probably never ever have the opportunity to do so much stuff around our house together,
Hmm.
right? Like or just spend time together,
Right.
right? It's yeah, it sucks being quarantined and isolated, or but we could just both sit in our living room and be
Right.
negative
Right.
about it, but that's the thing with this COVID. It hit everybody.
Oh yeah, it
There's
hit
not one
everyone.
group or one population or one demographic that was unaffected by this.
Right. Right.
So yeah, there's going to be some change and some adjustment. And there's a lot of things I think I feel for the people that had weddings lined up this summer,
Mm.
and and the graduations and
Oh yeah,
all
I
of the
got hit
things
there.
that the celebrations that had to get put on. I'm upset that but I'm over it. But I could still be annoyed that the KW Rib and Beer Fest is postponed until later this year. It's not in summer anymore, right?
Right,
But
right, yeah.
I look forward to that one every year.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of
Alexa's
lot of things
barbecue.
are changing now, I guess. Everything is like for me personally, like yeah, I was really angry about COVID, and that was it sounds kind of stupid when I say it now, but at the time I was just like angry at this virus. I was very, salty about missing out on my own graduation because I felt like, 5 years in the making. I thought deserved to at least walk down and receive it from the university. And I also felt, I guess, really lost just given the context of where I was, just because I just finished school and now this is like the void of uncertainty. This is the biggest void of uncertainty I've ever like dived into, right? So now because of that, I was like, that by itself brings a lot of anxiety. Like, okay, so now you don't know where you are, you don't know where you have to go. So like, okay, figure this out. Gave myself a little bit of time and then realized like I lost a lot of my routines that I had while I was in school. Cause like I took the gym for granted. I took libraries for granted. I took like, hanging out with my friends in these common areas for granted, social interactions and whatnot. And once you take away all these habits and you strip everything away, like there's no keystones, there's nothing going on. So then you're just like completely lost in this void,
Yeah.
you know? And that can get, like you said, you can either be, very negative about that and be like, oh, why is it happening to me? But that's a very narcissistic view because it's happening to everyone.
It's happening
Like,
to everyone. Yeah. 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 Like some things that yeah, the thoughts that we have, and yeah, it is just happening to everyone. And I even just think about my grandparents and my great grandparents, the depression, those types of things. But, you know, I have a reoccurring thought, and it's always in the middle of the winter, right?
right.
And like, parking lot X. So it's like, oh, it's such a far walk and it's cold out and, it's snowy, it's wet. And then I go back to, I instantly go right to my grandfather, who was a veteran and was in France during World War II in the
Right.
freezing cold. And I'm in not, this nice, engineered, winter jackets and stuff like this with the cold, damp canvases and stuff they had to wear. And I'm like, those guys, that's literally slugging it out in the trenches,
Right. That's a
freezing.
survival level of
Yeah, and they're there for everyone but themselves.
right.
Kind of, and I was like, yeah, this is nothing compared to
Right.
that.
So it all brings it down to perspective, I guess. Like we
Mhm,
living here, we do get really comfortable, like if
mhm,
for whatever reason, we have to impose difficulties on ourselves because
mhm,
a lot of the things that are taken care for us, right?
mhm,
So like it takes away from the value of things, and that's why once we had a pandemic, the first like crisis in my life that I've ever had to face,
mhm,
at this level, kind of like it really makes you think about what is important and what is not really what
mhm,
doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we're just like, we're here for a short period of time, right?
mhm,
And while we're here, you obviously, we're extremely lucky to be where we are. I'm super grateful for where I am,
mhm,
and I can, I have all these resources and
mhm,
that I can use to like, I guess, express myself and talk to
mhm,
other people and be a better version of myself. I have that opportunity. A lot of people don't.
mhm.
And so like it's just about having like you said, gratitude and like being grateful about all these things, because before you know it, all of it's like out, like
Mhm.
your time is over, and then you have to like
Yeah.
deal with that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing too. Like, I've kind of had a major, perspective shift in the last. Well, I'm going to be 38 later this year.
Hmm.
You know, 80, 80, 85 years. Hopefully, that would be a good number to get to, somewhere in there.
Right.
But it's almost over half. Like I'm half, well on my way to it.
Right.
Right? It's a sobering thought.
And time seems to be moving faster and faster as we
Mhm.
as we age, right? It's a smaller fraction every year.
Well, like I think we've all been kind of just so focused on trying to, like we're moving everything online for online education and stuff like that.
Right.
We're, but we're halfway through 2020 already, and
that's
it's
that's
been like that.
crazy.
It's gone like that.
Yeah, that's amazing because to me it feels like the year just started and then a
Mhm,
lot just happened. It was like a huge explosion, and then after that
mhm,
we're here now. And
Yeah.
Like it's difficult to recall, like, because I was thinking about it today. I've been back at my parents' house since March, so that's like 3 months ago.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I've had no school for 3 months, and I'm just at home. I have my own schedule, right?
Mhm.
So initially, my idea was like, oh no, like I don't have a schedule given to me. I don't have like someone telling me what to do, and like school kind of provides that for me. School gives me like the opportunities to go to the gym, and like I structure my
Mhm.
life around those habits that I have. But now I've started to realize that I have complete autonomy over my time.
Mhm.
Like I can do whatever I want as long as it serves me, right? I have all the responsibility on my own shoulders. No one else is there to like, I guess, take care of me in that sense. And
Mhm.
in a way, it's liberating because the more responsible you become, the more your life, I guess, comes together. And it
Mhm.
acts as I guess, a harmonious unit rather than a lot of chaotic bits that are everywhere.
Mhm. We start to, you know, gravitate towards what's like you said, important to us,
Hmm.
what we value.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So, and it is liberating. You're captain of your own ship.
Right. Yeah. Uh,
Mhm.
as you know, and you have control over your own ship. At least you don't know
Mhm.
about the waves or like the ocean, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You
That's
can
right.
have
And then
like
maybe there are rough waters, but you can reach out to your supports. Reach out to the people that you trust and people that have your best interests at hand.
right. I think that's really important for people to find as well, in my opinion. Like when you have mentors or friends, family, whoever it may be, like just
Mhm.
being able to speak your mind and be vulnerable and be honest about how you're feeling and where you are
Mhm.
in life. It's really important because we all get lost in this, like, I don't know. I feel like if you don't take a step back from everything that is going on, you become consumed by it, and then
Mhm.
it can be suffocating. to
Yeah.
to at least it was suffocating for me to understand that, wow, like everything is moving so fast and I can't control this part of my life. I don't know what I'm doing
Mhm.
here, and then you have all these like chronological age expectations of where you're supposed to be by
Yeah.
25, by 30, whatever. And when you're not meeting them, you're like, oh no, like what's
Well,
going
I'm a
on,
failure. What's
right?
wrong with me? I'm a failure, right? And we have all these socially constructed, by this age you're supposed to have this, and by this age you're supposed to be here, and right. And it is very suffocating because every phase of our life is kind of dictated by, well, by this age you're supposed to be married,
Hmm.
house, you know,
The
whatever,
American dream,
or
yeah.
yeah, living the suburban life or whatever.
Right.
But that's the thing, we get so fixated on these timelines that aren't even ours by the choosing.
Right, they're all
They've just
kind
kind of
of
been socially
dictated,
imposed
right?
on us. Yeah. And when we deviate from that, we, sometimes, it's tough.
Then you become an outcast or like a
Hmm.
weirdo, and you're like, you're ostracized by the group because you're
Hmm.
different than the norm.
Yeah.
And that's why also, like, whenever I look at these statistics for these like schools, I'm like, what am I looking at? What am I actually looking at? Like, there's like the mean and like whatever, and you see all these different GPAs that are in there. I'm like, okay, these
Hmm.
are different people,
Yeah.
right? And
With different experiences, different
yeah,
struggles, different, maybe, you know, yeah, just maybe
yeah,
different connections, like there's all,
right. There's so many different
all those types,
factors.
so many different factors at play
Yeah.
here. And we always, well, I shouldn't say we always, but we do, as human beings, tend to look at what everyone else has first and
Hmm.
then start to discount ourselves, right? We're
Right,
always
right,
so focused on, like, well, the grass always looks greener on the other side, or what's so and so getting over there. I
right,
heard an
right,
interesting quote recently. It's about, well, the grass might be look greener on the other side. It's because whoever's on the other side is watering
right, right.
it.
Yeah, that's
Right?
true. Yeah.
So take care of your own grass.
Should get that on a t-shirt. Take care of your own
Yeah.
grass.
Take
Yeah.
care of your own grass. Like, fertilize it, water it,
Right.
trim it, make it, be
N-
proud of it. Be proud
Right.
of yourself.
No, there's definitely something to be said about, like, like you're always under construction. You're trying to
Hmm.
be the best version of, like, I wrote this article yesterday. It's called Becoming More of Who You Are,
Hmm.
right? So the idea is like, in uncertainty there is growth, and I have to believe that, or else I'll get crippled by my anxieties. Like I have to believe that this is part of it.
Hmm.
This is all of it, basically. I'm going through it,
Hmm.
and it's like understanding that there is no finite destination. The only finite destination there is death. Like that. the end all of everything.
Yeah, the end
You
of the
know,
human existence, or your person.
well, my personal
Yeah,
existence would be
one day, some like all of us, one day we're going to cease to breathe.
right,
That's
right.
a that's a
And
fact.
that's a fact,
That's
and that's something you have to embrace and accept with like
hmm
open arms. But
hmm
I've realized like the more you experience in life, the more you age, right? Because age, we think of it in a chronological sense rather than an experiential, asset. Where
hmm
like we're thinking like, oh, I am 25 years old, I'm 30 years old, but we're not saying like, oh, someone who's you can age a lot within a short period of time if you have those experiences that you're
hmm
expected to have, or like that just life happens to you, right?
or even some of those negative experiences in our youth, like we have to grow up much faster than
Right, right,
right,
right.
like, and that also shapes our trajectory and our view of the world as well. So it, it's tough, right?
Hmm.
In those instances. So
So yeah, but like I guess for me, I started to realize that there is no right path.
hmm
There's only trial and error. There's no such thing as like this is how things are supposed to be. There's no such thing as that. That's just the normalcy that people have kind of concocted, I guess,
hmm
to like give you the sense of like security, or give you the sense of
yeah.
like urgency that you have to be
hmm
here by this point, or else you're a failure, or else you're not good enough.
hmm
And you kind of, I guess, everyone does it when you're in your head and you have these ideas, like we talked about before. It's that snowball effect again. And
hmm
how can you move forward if you think like that, or how can you allow
exactly.
yourself to grow?
Because then we'll sit there, and that's when we'll start going down those rabbit holes on everybody's social media and going,
Right,
well, yeah, and then
because then it comes
right.
back to that goal orientation rather than the pursuit of it,
hmm
you know.
Well, yeah, I want that. That would be nice. I want that. I want that. But you want that picture.
Hmm.
You don't know what's attached to that picture.
Right, 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 right.
Right? Like you don't know all behind the scenes aspect of it. So we might want that, but we
I mean,
want everything that comes
everyone is
along with
friends
it.
with like tragedy, you know. So,
hmm
like, regardless of what your position is in life, you are going to face tragedy at one point or the other. So,
hmm
like, to really look at someone else's life and be resentful, it seems to be the most unproductive way to move on with your own life, right? Like you said,
hmm
water your own grass, see what
hmm
happens. You know, like you'll be surprised how
Yeah,
things can turn out.
yeah. Water your grass, weed it, take care of it. Be at least that's yours.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of people have difficulty with that, and social media obviously
hmm
it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it could be really really
hmm
toxic as well.
Of
So just
course.
having that self-discipline is the main thing.
hmm
Yeah.
And yeah, and like what understand, like seeing and understanding where that the purpose of social media falls into your life as well, right? So it's great for staying connected with people,
Hmm.
right? I see social media more as a tool than a right.
Right, right,
It's you're going to connect with people. You're going to be able to check in on people easier. You're going to be able to maybe there's excitement, especially right now. We kind of need it,
hmm,
right? So we can share those experiences with maybe our family or our grandparents, or birthdays, or the celebrations, the graduations. Like it's
right,
provided us so much freedom,
right, right,
and as close as it can get to the physical human interaction part.
right.
So it's good in that sense, but you're right, it can be a very slippery slope when we start to wish,
Hmm.
right? I wish this, and I want that, and I wish that I could have that, and we totally discount
I think,
what we have.
yeah, I do agree with that for sure. We do that because like we only look at our negatives rather than what we already have, because we're not grateful with what we have. But I also think that during this time, this COVID-19 era, um, I think for the first time in a long time, people have had the time to be introspective about what they're doing in life and how they should move forward. Like you said, I started valuing family more because I'm spending so much time with them. My
Mhm.
dad and I were hanging out more, we're talking more, I'm getting to know him better,
Mhm.
and like these things are, it's a byproduct of this pandemic, but
Mhm.
these are just like the positives that could come out of it, that could
Yeah.
potentially increase the quality of your life.
Mhm. Yeah, it is a tragic thing, like that, for all of the families that have had hardships, or lost loved ones. It's terrible, and we can't overstate that.
Hmm.
But at the same, like we've seen throughout human history, different pandemics and things like that. And yeah, it's tough. But in those times, like, you're right. I don't think we've really had. It's forced us to slow down
Mm-hmm.
and kind of be with our own thoughts too.
It kind of exposes all the frailties that we didn't know about, right? Like our healthcare
Mm-hmm.
systems, our like economy and
Oh yeah.
everything that just got destroyed by
Mm-hmm.
this pandemic, and really makes you realize that, hey, maybe worrying about X, Y, and Z is not the best way forward. Maybe like
Yeah.
water your own grass, like maybe
Yeah.
like go through the motions that will serve you and serve the people around you,
Mm-hmm.
because you have the potential to be the greatest version of yourself. And I
Mm-hmm.
talk about potential because like it's something that doesn't get discussed enough, I guess, within, like, because there's like expectations of like, oh, this is what your occupation is going to be, this is why you're going to school,
Mm-hmm.
blah blah blah. But then no one asks you. I mean, I guess you should ask yourself, like, what do you really want from this life? What are the
Mm-hmm.
opportunities that you want to strive towards, right?
Yeah.
And what are the opportunities that you can strive towards? And if you die in pursuit of that, will you die happy?
Mm-hmm.
So these are like difficult questions to ask, because like
Oh,
it breaks you down.
well, it does. It does. Yeah, right. It's very raw, and and we're very vulnerable when we kind of look inside ourselves that deeply.
Hmm.
And it takes courage to say what you want, what you really want,
Right.
right? And sometimes in that pursuit, we're going to have to leave other things behind too.
Right.
I think that's where a lot of the, I guess, conflict comes in too as well, right?
Hmm.
Circles of friends are going to change. Like the job might change. You might have to, move somewhere away from everybody, kind of thing. And it's just, yeah.
I guess all of it is fluid, in the sense that
Hmm.
we can't stay stagnated. It's always going to keep moving. Like everything is constantly changing, and we
Well,
have to
that's
be
the
okay
thing
with
too,
that.
right? We can go back to just like our well-being, right? And we know that if we're not putting our energy into something moving it forward, if we just stay stagnant, our well-being is going to decrease over time.
Hmm. I think it's that finding that like flow state again, right? Finding something that is not too
Mhm.
difficult, where you get discouraged by it,
That's
you
right.
know, something that's not too easy, so that you're not like you're bored by it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Like really easy and you can get it done right away. It's finding that fine line where you can kind of thrive to become, you can feel yourself be in that zone, and you can feel yourself improving on a
Hmm.
daily basis, and at the end of the day you can like go to bed knowing that you did the best that you could do,
Hmm.
those
For today,
performances, yeah, for
for
today.
for today, right? And that also makes me think of the the tug of war between performance and self-worth,
Mm,
right?
right, because that I don't know if it's true with other cultures as well, but I know here for a fact that your self-worth is like really tied down to your education a lot of the time, especially in the circles that we are in, right? Like, so
Hmm.
someone who has more letters next to their name might have a better have more self-worth, or
Well,
perceived
that's what
self-worth.
the perception might be, right? Or
Right,
the it might even be a facade too, as well, right?
right,
Kind of thing. But that's what we automatically assume.
right,
Like
right.
our society, places certain importance on certain occupations, certain levels of prestige, right?
Hmm.
And we're assuming that is tied to the self-worth, right? It's like
Right,
we professional athletes, right?
right, yeah,
The sports are awesome.
of course. Yeah,
Love, right? Like sports
yeah,
are awesome, and to the things that they can do, right? In all sports, but not every. We as a society we perceive that that's like the highest level of success,
right,
but not every professional athlete is a class A role model.
right.
So we're assuming that because of they hold that position that is
Hmm.
that their self-worth has to go up. Or we could
And
even have athletes that do all this stuff and do all these great things, but inside you know
right,
they're hurting,
right,
kind of thing as well. But we're like, oh, like, well, Michael Phelps is an example of that, right? Like he's the most decorated Olympian in the history of the universe.
right. Yes, that's
But
true.
and we all just assumed because we were awed by his talent and his work ethic and his swimming feats,
Right.
and we just automatically assumed that he must be like must just love himself.
And like I guess the we don't even take into consideration that these are like people, right? When you see celebrities or when you see like athletes on television, you think like, oh, these guys are like getting paid, they're making money, they're happy, they're like, they have these supermodel wives, whatever the case may be. You see that facade of like, what they're portraying out to the world. But like, when you have that many cameras on you,
Mm-hmm.
right, that expectation, that pressure must be like insane to feel that.
Oh,
Like if
yeah.
I feel like this without any cameras on me, I don't know how they feel for performance. Right.
Well, that's the thing, and that's what we see is the marker of success in our society. And if you're not striving towards that,
Mm-hmm.
then you're deviating from the norm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And these are
And then it
all.
comes into that whole performance, like the self-worth aspect. So, and
Mm-hmm.
then the performance, right? And in sports, sometimes because the identity is so closely tied to the athlete, of course, we might feel that our self-worth takes a hit because we underperformed one day,
Right.
right? Or in the academic context, so we bomb a test,
Right.
right?
I've done that before.
Instead of saying, you know what, I probably didn't. Well, this reminds me of it. I'll tell you guys a story about my experience, my undergrad. But it's like if we
Please.
didn't get the mark we thought we were supposed to get, so we had an off day. Maybe we didn't get any sleep last night because we had to, call 911 because our roommate or our floor mate was needed medical assistance or something like that, right?
Right.
Like all of these things come into play, yet we still expect that we're going to, perform at our best if the conditions, were set up for that, right? But
Right.
then
Things
we
happen
take
all the
that as
time.
a personal attack on her. Then it's like, oh, I'm dumb or I'm
Right.
stupid or everyone else is so much smarter than me,
Right.
right? So I was in my second year at what course was it? It was motor learning and performance
Right.
course. I think I still got the textbook around here somewhere, but the course was set up. It was three tests, so kind of like three midterms, a final, and then there was a written project in there. So do the first one, get 75. Do the second one, get a 77. So I'm thinking I'm doing all right. And I was, if I was anywhere between in the 70s, I was ecstatic. It was second year university,
Right.
and again, I was playing junior hockey and I had a job.
Right.
Right. So all of these things, these aren't excuses by any means. These were just because they were my choices. It's just that's part of who I was at the time with my responsibilities. But third test comes around, and I ended up getting 44 on it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was the last one to leave the classroom. I'm just sitting there looking it over, and the professor came by and he goes, "Oh, I suppose you're pretty upset with me for this mark." And I just looked up at him. I'm like, "Why would I be upset with you?"
Mm.
I said, "I earned this 44."
Right.
That was
Right.
the best that I could have done on that day because me thinking that I should have been studying for a few days beforehand, but
Right.
no. What was I doing? Partying, having fun, playing
Right.
hockey. I earned that 44. That was the best I could have done.
Right.
I didn't make any excuses. I did what I could that day, and that was it.
Yeah. It reminds me of like I guess at least you had that notion of taking responsibility for yourself for
Mm-hmm.
that action. But I it reminds you of like my first semester at Waterloo where I think I failed 4 out of my 7 midterms that semester, and it was a rough semester. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't end up failing any courses, but like I remember going like that was the most intense feelings of failure that I've ever felt. I
Mm-hmm.
guess until that point, I was 17, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"What is going on?"
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought I was dumb compared to other people, and then
Mm-hmm.
that kind of perpetuates all the other negative feelings, and then I end up doing
Yeah.
bad on like the next exam or the next exam after that. you
Yeah.
know, and
Because
then
I'm thinking like, "Whoa, I'm at Waterloo, and
right,
like this is a very tough program to be in, and right." And you're
right.
thinking, well, if everyone else is getting it, they must be so much smarter than me.
Exactly right, because like you're
And
taking
then,
out of your small pond from like your high school into like this
mm-hmm,
huge institution where there's like so many like I don't know 200, 300 other students in your class,
mm-hmm,
and everyone else is like, I mean, everyone that you see is like doing fine. you know?
Well, it looks like that.
Right, right.
We assume that we automatically just assume that everyone else is doing so much better than we are.
Right. And I'm glad that I had to go through all that because it made me a better student. It made me understand, like I learned how to learn. I learned how to like
Mm-hmm.
read. I learned how to write during those years at university. And like I saw my own progression, how my average increased by 10% every year, how like
Mm-hmm.
I, got mentally in a better place to be able to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh, only if I did this thing differently, or only if I did this thing differently, my GPA would be much higher. I'd be in med school right now, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. But, at the end of the day, it's like, it is what it is. Like, you have to be, the things happen the way they were supposed to happen, like to hold on to these ideas. It's like being a fundamentalist. You don't want to be there. Like, you don't want to be like, oh, remember when things were so great? Remember when this
Mm-hmm.
used to be like that? That doesn't really, like, it's good to have a look back once in a while to see how far you've come. But to
Yeah.
hold on to the past like that and not forgive yourself for the mistakes that you've made in the past seems like a really unproductive route to like spiral down
Oh
on.
yeah. Yeah, and that's it. Like we could look back on a lot of things in our lives because with hindsight, right? Like it's
Hmm.
2020, we see it
Right.
perfectly. But at those particular moments in time, we weren't the same person. We
Hmm.
were doing the best that we could with the information that we had at the time.
Right.
You
Right.
can't
Right.
compare yourself like that. Like, yeah, what we know now to because I didn't know that five
Hmm.
years ago. No, I didn't. That wasn't even a thought in my mind, kind of
Right.
thing,
Right.
right? And or yeah, I should have done this or I should have done that, and you end up just gonna. Here's the dad joke for the show. You don't should on yourself looking into the past, right?
Right.
It's it's not it's tough not to,
Right.
but but then we again it's just that compound. Then it just further with those thoughts. It's like, oh yeah, I'm such an idiot. I should have done this.
Right. Right.
And
And
I'm
then you
so
realize
stupid. I should
like,
have done that. It's like, well, no,
no.
not at the time. You made the choice for what you felt was in your best interest at that time.
Right. Right. And I think that's what something like we have to be aware of when
Hmm.
we are looking back into our own lives, that
Hmm.
this is where you were in life at that time, and it
Hmm.
wouldn't have gone any differently than what it was. Like you might think like, oh, only if I got an 80 here, because some of these marks do bother me. Like when I look at my transcript and I see like something like a 79 or like a 69, those ones that are like
Hmm.
almost there, they
Yeah,
do bother me. I'm like, damn, like I wish I put in a little bit more effort. you
but
know
who's to say though
right,
that
right,
that little bit of effort would have resulted in that 80?
right.
Some courses I look at, it's like, ooh, 62, like from
Hmm.
my old transcript, right? I'm like, wow, that was a struggle, but we
Right,
got through it.
right, right, yeah. i
It's
I think like once you go through that grinder, it really makes you
mhm,
realize that there's things that you can do to better yourself, just like in
mhm,
performing in anything, right? It's just a bunch of habits, like
mhm,
maybe better yourself in studying, better yourself in like your mental health, and
mhm,
meditations, and that's like one habit that has had an impact on my life recently, is just
mhm,
meditation. It just feels really good to be there.
mhm. Yeah, I really I enjoy the now that I'm able, I'm very thankful that I'm able to walk around my neighborhood. The green
Mm.
space is it's just nice to be in green space,
Right.
right? And there's research coming out talking about just sitting 5 minutes in green space has a significant impact. It lowers your stress and anxiety, but also boosts positivity as well.
Hmm. Well, I think.
Sometimes that's sometimes that's the thing though. Sometimes a change of scenery is needed.
Right, right, for sure. Going on
You're
a
sitting
walk,
there,
or like
yeah.
changing where you are, like your locations. I did that a
Hmm.
lot when I was in my undergrad. Like I would study somewhere and then I'll move to like a different like cafe or something, and then I'll move
Hmm.
to like somewhere else with my friends. And
Hmm.
like you learn that you can focus anywhere. You just need to like
Hmm.
change the setting once in a while to like I guess refresh yourself, right? Like
Hmm.
and then it kind of showed me, I guess, over the years I realized that all these habits are like keystone habits. They
Hmm.
feed into each other, and they make you the person that you are, right?
Hmm.
And one thing that I'm very grateful for is, like, I remember one of our conversations, I asked you about, like, do you feel, I was like, yo, you are a professor at this university, you're a very accomplished man. Do you feel like you've done it? You're there, right? And then you told me very honestly, you said, and I really appreciated this. He said, I'm always playing catch up. Like I'm also on that wheel. I'm also on that. So it's never
Hmm.
ending. So that kind of reaffirmation was good for me to have, because it takes you away from that idea that there's a destination that is like heaven or whatever, right? Like a destination that is utopia, where there's like no problems. It's like, no, as you get older, there's like more problems. You just learn like
Yeah.
how to get stronger, and deal with
Mhm.
them.
Yeah, no, it does feel like catch up a
Hmm.
lot. But I also remind myself that, we're my colleagues, we I think a lot of us feel that way.
Right.
It's like I don't know, like, I think the day that I say that I'm on top of everything and everything's fine will be the day I retire.
Right.
In the professional sense kind of thing,
Right.
right? Because like I said, there's always something that we can be doing, but just because, and I've had to wrestle with this as well. And it's just because there's something there's always something that can be done.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be done right this minute,
Right.
kind of thing, right? Like this experience with COVID is I've forced to slow down.
Hmm.
I thought, and it's not. I don't know if it's about making better habits, but just making more efficient habits, right? It's
Right.
like our
Right.
goals, right? Like we can make more effective goals. Um, and just even with my consulting and things like that, like the landscape has dramatically changed. This is how it's conducted now,
Right. Right.
and I think and I think it's okay for right now. It has
Hmm.
to be okay for right now.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. This is the new, right? Like
Hmm.
it's like the direction that we're, I guess, traveling towards at this point in time. And it's okay, it's an adaptation. We have to
Hmm.
overcome and adapt and try to make the best out of this, given situation. Well,
Hmm.
I wanna thank you for coming on the show. I feel like, I took a lot of your time, and we had I guess, like, I always enjoy our conversations while I was in my undergrad, and like all those all the times we grabbed coffee or whatever it may be. It
Hmm.
really helped me shape the person that I am today, and I'm always like grateful for that. Like I cannot say it enough times, because at the end of the day, for young men, young women, like it really makes a difference to have people to guide you along the road, because it is someone who's lived longer than you, someone who's experienced more
Hmm.
than you, has certain insights that can help you out. So
Hmm.
I'm really grateful for the fact that we have that, and then the fact that you provided that opportunity for me. So I'm grateful, and thank you for being on the show. I'm 100% sure people that are listening will really enjoy this episode. I had a lot of fun talking to you. And is there, like, anywhere people can find your work, or anything that
Oh
you like to
yeah.
plug?
Well, before we get to that, I just want to say thank you for having me here. This has been a real treat, and I've always enjoyed our conversations and our meeting up for coffee and just shooting the breeze. It's
Hmm.
been great, and um, just a point on the mentors thing. Like I think every stage of our life we should be seeking a mentor, someone that's
Hmm.
kind of been walk the path, right? And
Right.
with the mentors, it's not like it's not like we're looking for approval,
Right.
right? It's like it's more of counsel and
Right.
guidance, right? And I have mentors I'm working with, and I always think, where would I be if it weren't for the people that laid the groundwork,
Hmm.
right? So I'm very grateful for the mentors and the people that I've looked up to, whether it's hockey coaches or my professors, some of my professors in undergrad, or my graduate supervisors and my PhD supervisors. Like, they've all been wonderful mentors. Um, and yeah, it's pay it forward is really the
Right.
right.
That's all I can
I
do.
Yeah, and I think this program and this podcast you're putting together is really going to take off, and it's yeah it, it's really a big undertaking, so congratulations on that. So be sure to give yourself a
Thank you. Thank you.
pat on the back for that, because you said you went out of your comfort zone, and it takes courage.
It does. I mean, like, it definitely was something that I haven't done before. But like you said, I watered some grass, and now I'm
Hmm.
here.
Plant some
So
seeds, water some grass, and see what happens. Maybe I pull out a weed or two, but
exactly.
sometimes that
Yeah.
happens, right? That's sometimes, and it's supposed to happen,
Right.
right?
Right.
That's mm, yeah, continue watering your grass
No, I think,
and
no,
see
thank
what
you so
happens.
much, because like this conversation was it was here in like a timely fashion for me, because I needed to be I needed to like hear these things from you. So like, thank you for that. And I'll just if you have a book or anything like that that you would like to where people can
Yeah,
find your work or something like that,
sure.
that'd be great.
Yeah, if you wanted to check out my website, it's wilsonmentalperformance.com, and have a resource page on there. And there's a couple books that I've self-published on there as well. One of them I use for our class, for the 453 class
Hmm.
at U Waterloo, the mental training. And then there's the other one. It's called Fate. A former student, kinesiology student, Ambika Banzel, wrote that with me. We did that. We did a fun project over a summer, and we created that. The other book, it's called Fate, and it's we incorporate mental training into the pursuit of everyday success. So when we break FATE down, it's an acronym for faith, attitude, trust, and effort, all things that we can control.
Wow. Yeah, I think I have a copy of that in my shelf.
Mhm.
I'll definitely get to reading that before. So thank you so much. Yeah, I'll just end this conversation here, and then I'll talk to you up there.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you, Wade.
My pleasure.